Hi, welcome to Infusion, the podcast. I'm comedian Chris Patrick, aka self-proclaimed power man, and I'm here with my co-host and significant other, Rach.
Hey guys.
Today we got an interesting show. I can't wait. I can't wait to get. We got somebody, and she's actually phoning in from Brazil. So I really can't. She's she's a family constellation facilitator and energy healer. Her name is Elen Silva, and she's going to tell us what exactly she does, and what exactly her work entails. And I guess Rach has done some work with her, so Rach is going to tell us all. Is that right, Rach?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, Elen, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So what exactly does your work entail, and what exactly do you do?
Yeah, well, family constellation, it has nothing to do with the star.
Okay.
It was just like bad translation from its origins, which it comes from Germany. So, it was bad translation to Portuguese. But basically, what we do is we look into generational family patterns of trauma or just family patterns of behavior.
Okay.
And we are able to untangle some patterns that actually cause us problems in the present.
Okay, so you're saying.
So we use go ahead.
Oh, so you're saying and doing some of the research for the for this show, found that they had some soldiers from Vietnam, and they had PTSD, but then they found out that their grandkids also had PTSD from the generational thing. So you is it more like that, or?
Yes, exactly. And what happens is we grew up in a family, right? And children, especially until they are 7 years old, they are very intuitive. They don't really know the rules, or they don't have the communication skills to talk about things. They just perceive the environment they are in, and they learn how to behave in that environment to survive, right? It's like our reptilian brain allows us to have that, or what I say, that how we have to adapt to survive in a family.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter if it's a very normal family, if it's a more troubled family, we have the intuition to understand it so we can belong. And sometimes when you have people, for example, that went to war, well, they will have a lot of suffering, and they will connect to a lot of suffering of the people they were fighting against, let's say. So the children will perceive that energy, that suffering, even if the person is not talking about it. That's what we call the morphic field. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake has explained to us that through the morphic field, all around us, there's information. And children can sense it more because they don't have the communication skills. So they will use intuition. As we start growing up, we acquire more communication skills, and we let go of intuition. So whatever we picked up as children, it tends to be our go-to behavior. It's almost like an answering machine that we have for situations. And we grow up functioning from the programming we got as children. So that's why when we grow up, when we are adults, when we get into relationships, or when we get into the job market, we start having problems because the programming we got as children to survive that environment doesn't match the skills that we need to have now.
Well, that's interesting. Okay,
and then when we don't do, go ahead.
Okay. Let me kind of walk our listeners through this. Okay, so you're a young guy. You go to war. Okay, and you go to the war and you see some stuff, some really traumatized stuff. You come back from war. You get a job. You get a house. You find a wife, you marry, you have kids, and some of the stuff you've learned and some of the stuff you've adapted being in war, you like some of the stuff I saw again in doing research, like you got this alertness. You always got to be alert, and you pass this on to your kid, or you've seen some stuff that's just kind of troubling or something like that, but you can pass this on to your kid.
Well, I also think it has to
not
do
only the person that went to war, like let's say you went to war. Imagine like all of the anxiety and all of the fear that a wife that's left behind felt. Imagine that wife is pregnant, for example. Whatever emotions she's feeling, she's going to pass it on to the child. So, for example, the child in the womb, whatever feelings the mother has during pregnancy, it's the filters that child is going to have, the reference that child is going to have about the word. So if the woman who's pregnant sees the word as a dangerous place because her husband is in a dangerous situation, the child will grow up observing, focusing more on the dangers that exist in the world than the good situations that she could focus on. So it's almost like she builds a GPS for dangerous situations. Because for her father, that was necessary for survival. But she doesn't know that. She just understands that this is how the world works.
Yeah, just that's how.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes,
because it's very complex. Like,
well,
we're just talking about one generation,
right. And for me and you, we went back 5 generations.
4 generations.
Yeah, for me and you, we went back. Yeah, me and you went back 5 generations. And that's it. Kind of goes back into that thing of nature versus nurture in a way, because in the way that how is your family run, and how do you change your dynamics after this therapy is done? Like. Well,
Rach, what? Okay, you said you went back. You said 5 generations.
Yeah, we went back 5 generations.
Okay, well, walk us through this. Okay, so you laid down. She talked to you, and what happened when you went back these 5 generations? Kind of give us an insight on that.
So first off, she's in Brazil. Well, I'm not flying to Brazil unless you have the money to fly me to Brazil.
I'll make the reservations as soon as.
So first off, she was like, we've got for us, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. Ellen, what time is it for you? Right now it's 10 o'clock in the morning.
12.
Yeah. Yeah. So, for me, it was 7 p.m. and she did not go to bed until almost 1 o'clock in the morning when we got done. Like there's a time gap in here.
Okay.
She was like, we did almost 3 hours of work here.
Okay. Well, like I said, we're details.
All right. So, first off, I wasn't laying down. It's not like you lay down on a therapy couch or anything like that. It's a field that she gets you in front of, and it's in her little square field. And Ellen, I'll let you take it from there, from what we were doing.
Yeah, and the first thing I'd like to explain is, like, when we work with family constellation, it's actually supposed to mean family repositioning. It's the goal on a session is to observe where are the members of the family positioned and how are they connected to each other. So we can observe what is connected that is not supposed to. For example, a child is connected to the victims of their father during the war. It's connected to the heavy energy, that suffering. So that is something that is not supposed to be connected. So we will bring into the field elements representing the client, the parents, whatever it is, the issue that they're having, the trouble that they're having. And then we identify if there has been any like traumatic event, or it's just in the way that the family has been functioning, like how they relate to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when we put these elements in the, let's call it the field, but it's just like we put this little doll representing each family member, and we observe where they are looking at. If they're looking at the present, if they're looking at the past, if they're looking outside the field. It all gives us information or indication to what's going on. Is the problem in the past? Is the problem in the present? Is the problem outside the field? It's someone that's being excluded that we need to include. So we're basically looking for the connections that are there and the disconnection where there should be a connection. For example, a father that went to war, it is very likely that he stays connected to those victims suffering. So he's not connected to life. He's there, he's at home, he's doing all these activities with the child, but he's not emotionally connected because he's too conflicted inside. You know, so we're like, oh, but my father was present. He was there every day. It doesn't matter. What matters is the emotional connection. If that person is carrying a very heavy suffering, a very heavy trauma, they cannot emotionally connect to their children, for example. So you look for the root. What led that person to go to war in the first place?
Yeah.
It's nothing is like out of the blue. Okay. There's always indication. Maybe a great grandfather went to war and came home with all of this trauma, all of this emotion, and it wasn't worked on. It wasn't released. So it's almost like another family member will remake that situation so we can deal with it better this time. And sometimes we do. Sometimes we don't know about it, and we just keep repeating the same story over and over again. So what we did with Rachel is we started bringing in family members connected to the situation. For example, the mother is disconnected. So we're like, where is she looking at? Where is her mother? Is her mother looking at her? So, for example, in the present, when I have an issue with my mother, I feel like I was rejected. Maybe it's because my mother had some trauma during pregnancy, because she didn't connect emotionally to her mother. So her having a pregnancy triggered all of her pain because she wasn't connected to her mother. So I feel rejected now because my mother felt rejected. Because maybe her mother was so concerned about the husband that was overseas in the war that she didn't connect to the child. She was too worried. She was too much like in fear to connect to a child, for example. So when I look at my mother now, and I'm like, oh, I have problems with my mom. People say, oh, you have to take responsibility for your emotions. You have to heal. Yeah, but when I felt the pain of feeling rejection from my mother, it's not that easy.
Okay.
Well, when I go into a session, I understand the context behind my mother, why she wasn't able to connect to me emotionally, or why I felt abandoned by her, why she wasn't present for me.
Okay.
It is so much easier. Like, oh, so this is what happened.
Right.
Yeah. Well, can we take it like a step further? Like, okay, with like addiction. So say, guy comes back from war, he becomes an alcoholic, and the next couple generations, the next two kids become alcoholics, is there something that does the same thing affect something like that, like addiction? You know, like my dad came back from war, started drinking a lot.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. Every addiction is the person is just trying to numb a feeling that they don't know how to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, it's because that feeling is not theirs to begin with. It's a feeling that they picked up as children. So you've been feeling that for so long that you think it's yours.
Mm-hmm. Well,
But actually, it's not. Usually, people that have addiction, they are looking at someone that, for example, their mother or their father were looking at.
mm-hmm.
Like one of their parents were emotionally unavailable because, there was a death that, they didn't grieve properly. They didn't let the emotions out. They just held on to someone that died, for example. They didn't agree. They were just mad that someone died.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
That person, we say it as if they are connected to death instead of life.
Yeah.
So the child, it's almost as if the mother or the father is looking back instead of looking at the child, who is the future. Mm-hmm. So that child is feeling the pain because they picked it up from one of the parents or both.
Mm-hmm.
And so we say to people like, well, you could just stop drinking. Well, the pain doesn't go away. Nothing they do makes the pain go away because it's not there.
So you have to look deeper.
So
you have to look deeper into it.
And the story, exactly. They just bought into the idea that this is how you feel. Because imagine you are in a family where everybody grew up seeing life as hardships and it's very difficult and you have to work 3 jobs to put food on the table.
Mm-hmm.
You're there, you're a child, you're there, you're so happy, you get home, you just want to play. No one wants to play with you. Everybody's on it's like just disconnected or just watching TV because they're trying to numb something. They're trying to numb their pain. Well, how do you feel after some time? You stop asking people to play with you. You just disconnect yourself too.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, like
that's why in the future you're gonna go into addiction.
Well, like, and that's interesting too because I'm African American, and some of the stuff I've been reading about and some of the stuff I've been seeing is that in America generations ago, if African American, your ancestors were probably slaves here in this country. But some of the stuff I've been seeing is that there's still an effect from that because some people go, well, that was so many years ago. That wasn't you. But as the generational pains, the pain keeps going through these generations, So my question to you is,
exactly.
Okay, we have this pain, we have this. Okay, or the guy comes home from war, or PTSD. But my question to you is, okay, now we have this chain, this thing that's going generation after next generation. Next generation. How do we break the chain?
We look at the story because sometimes the story that has been told generations ago, our family comes from slavery, or our family, like the men are all addicts, or the women in the family are so strong they raise the children by themselves.
That's us.
These stories are people's perception. It's not exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So as long as we keep telling the story that
Ellen,
was told to us, we are receiving the emotion. Yes.
I can say for me and you did my energy about a month ago, and I can say in that month, I've strongly learned to start leaning more on Chris, whereas before it was I'm in a bind, I'm going to do it on my own, or like you were saying, the women are very strong in my family and we depend on each other and not so much the male, right? With the 5 generations, we kept on pulling in the females and not so much the males. And what I can say is when you know better, you do better, right? So I learned that I wasn't depending on the males. When I have 2 sons and I have Chris, I would turn to my daughters before I would turn to the males, and I looked at myself and I'm like, I've been doing this for years. So when you learn,
and it comes from distrust.
So when you learn better, you do better.
Like, I don't want to feel vulnerable to the man, right?
Yep. And it's been 5 generations of my family doing this, and just doing the energy reading with you and looking back and just strongly looking at my family and knowing that it was true, that we were always depending on the women on our family instead of on the males. Yeah. When you know better, you do better.
It changes a lot, right?
Yeah.
It changes our perception, how we look at other people.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that, I found out, one of the things I was looking at, and this just came before, way before this, a few years ago, when me and Rachel started dating. Let's just say her ex-husband, let's just say he wasn't very motivated, okay? And dealing with the kids, and I'm like, you guys you're always like this, and then all of a sudden it hit me. It's like he's had a lasting effect on him, and like I'm friends with him, and I'm like, well, your dad has this, and they don't want nothing to do with them. But then some of the stuff they do, some of their actions as far as doing it, I'm like, and it's hit me like, yeah, he's had a lasting effect on him. This effect that he's had on the kids as far as doing this. I'm like, you guys say you don't like him, but you're a lot like, but you are a lot like him, because it's a blood
in your
thing.
actions.
Yeah, in your actions.
Exactly. But you know what happens? Yeah, but you know what happens? Everything that we try to exclude and to say, like, I don't want this, like the father, whatever he is, if he had been a murderer, the children, they are 50% Rachel, 50% him. So every time I try to exclude him, I become just like him.
Yeah.
Either exactly the same or exactly the opposite. Either way, there's no balance.
Yeah.
Because I will be putting so much energy to be unlike him that I will not be connected to my own life. I will be putting my energy in the past, not being like him.
Exactly. So back to the question: how do we break these chains, these generational chains? How does a person come and say, hey, you know what? I got to go. The road's going this way. Everybody's went this way. How do I take a different path?
You look back, because most people are like, well, I'm here, I'm making decisions. No, you're not.
Yeah.
You have been programmed as a child. So if you don't look back and understand what is the pattern, actually, I will rephrase that. Not even what is the pattern, but what is the motivation behind the behavior. Because, for example, Rachel said, I was like always counting on the women. What is the motivation? Because back then, one woman was betrayed by a man, let's say. So they all start looking at men with distrust. until you go back there and understand, oh, my ancestor 5 generations ago suffered at the hands of a man. So now that I see all of the consequences that this is bringing to the family, I am going to take a step to forgive these two, to allow these two to solve their problems between them. And I'm not going to look at men with distrust because of her. If I don't see you, if I don't see what's going on behind, what is the issue that caused this, and I start a relationship and I have a great relationship and I trust my husband, deep down in my unconscious mind, I'm going to feel like I am betraying that ancestor that suffered at the hands of man. Mm-hmm. So when I know, I can make a conscious decision to let go of that behavior. If I just go and have a relationship because I'm like, well, all the women in this family have bad relationships because they don't trust their men. So I'm going to trust my man now. I'm going to self-sabotage in another area of my life. Mm-hmm. So I can show them that I still belong, that I'm not betraying them. It's almost like everybody's suffering. I'm going to be happy in this relationship, but then I'm not going to have money. So I can suffer with you too. And the thing is, we're not supposed to hold on to the suffering. We're supposed to release. So when I look back and I understand the context behind this behavior, I can let it go. Mm-hmm. I don't need to say it. I don't need to repeat it out of trying to belong with my ancestors that suffering. Mm-hmm. For example, slavery. You talked about it, right?
Yep.
In Brazil, it's the same thing. We're based, like the colonizing of the country was clearly based on slavery, right? So what happens is, I am not a slave now, but I will work like 3 jobs because I'm not making enough money. Is that not slavery? I am going through the same suffering that my ancestors went through different actions. Mm-hmm. I will get pregnant from a man that wants nothing to do with the child. So I will have to raise the child by myself. That's slavery. I will not have time to do anything else. I will be always tired, always overworked. And deep down is just to feel like it's a childish way of showing our family that we belong with them. That they suffered, so I'm going to suffer too. Mm-hmm. This is the childish thing that we do, right? So when we look at it and we understand and we respect, oh, so you suffered a lot. You were unconscious of that. The person who enslaved you, well, they had their own trauma too. And somehow they made life go forward, good or bad, with the suffering, with all the problems. I'm still here. Life came to me. So when I can forgive whatever happened there, when I can release it, I can do something different without sabotaging another area of my life.
Yeah, or sabotaging yourself.
Drag on the suffering.
Yeah. Well, Ellen, this has been a very, very interesting conversation. Sorry, but it's come to the end of our podcast. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, you got a website or web pages or something they can look at?
Yeah, I have Instagram. I have Instagram where I post about the stuff because it's very abstract, right? Like agree that it's not like a black and white conversation. It's not something you so this is what you do. No, it's very complex to explain and for people to understand, I would say. So I'm always posting stuff about it to help my clients, right?
And how can they find you on Instagram?
Yeah, I'm going to have to spell because it's in Portuguese.
Yeah.
So it's Elen, CF, terapeuta. It's ELEN.
ELEN.
CF. Yeah. CF.
EF.
C as in cat.
All right.
F as in Susan.
CF.
And I'll have all that
as in Tom.
I'll have all that on our information for you guys to get a hold of. So.
Yeah, because it's in Portuguese.
Yes. So you guys can get a hold of her.
T-E. Yeah, T-E-R-A.
R-A.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As in park.
Uh-huh.
T-U. T as in Tom. A.
Okay. All right, and like Rach said, she'll have all that information. Where you have the information at, Rach?
I'll have it on our Buzzsprout information, and you guys can get that on any stream that you guys listen to.
And yeah, Ellen, this is an interesting conversation. Like I said before, like I've always said to Rachel, I was like, yeah, you know what? When you look right down to it, we're all messed up some way or another, But it all comes down to
exactly.
It all comes down to breaking
better,
the
you
chain.
Do better.
Yeah, when you know better, you do better. That's a good one. That's a good one. And it all comes down to when you see this stuff. Once you become aware, you can break the train, and it goes back kind of to the old adage, you got to look back before you can move forward. So, like I said, Ellen, thank you so much. Thank you so much for calling in and doing this podcast with us. And I'm going to let Rach close us out.
All right, you guys. Once again, we come to an end. History is born on lines of hate. We are trying to build lines of love on here and make you guys your best advocate. If you guys love what you've heard, please subscribe. And Chris, close us out.
Thanks a lot for joining us for this episode of Infusion, the podcast. Again, Ellen, thanks a lot. And like we said, we have all the information and anything you want on our Buzzsprout. Yep. So wherever you get your podcast, you can find this information, and you can definitely look back to move forward. Thank you so much.